I don't think you can experience the Rite and not love it, not keep loving it.
The impact of a performance of the Rite of Spring never goes away.
If you turn your back on it, it will bite you.
Stravinsky had produced the Firebird Ballet, which was a sort of outgrowth of the old Russian styles, the music of Rimsky-Korsakov. It was a phenomenal success. It was music that had great colour. But while he was writing on that, something came into his mind that was completely different. This was a vision he had of a young girl dancing herself to death in a sort of pagan rite ritual surrounded by elders. And that was the genesis of what became the Rite of Spring. Well, Gergiev was a major force in Russian ballet at the time. He nurtured a number of important talents, Prokofiev, for example, and of course Stravinsky. The great Stravinsky ballets grew out of the relationship between Stravinsky and Gergiev. In the air in Russia at the time was a drive towards, if you like, the marriage between spirit and earth. People wanted to rediscover their roots, the primitive urge, if you like. It was very much a part of what was happening in the arts at the time. And Stravinsky was able to express that through this extraordinary music. It's difficult to imagine the effect that this must have had. Suddenly people had gone to listen to a Delibes type ballet. They were sitting there. This wailing bassoon comes out of nowhere. These ferocious rhythms sound, and it's instant shock for the audience. People stood up, they started shouting, there was sort of rioting going on. Eventually it settled down. But the interesting thing is that when the music was played later on, Pierre Bonteur, the great French conductor who conducted the premiere of the ballet, also conducted the concert premiere of the work. That reaction wasn't so much to the music as to the production. The music, I think, excited people and they got used to it quite quickly. So you've got that combination of familiarity, which is obviously very important, and that sense of excitement, which even now in a good performance, under a fiery conductor, still has the potential to change you, I think. It's one of those scores.
You don't have to forget the link to this pagan Rus, the images, the power, mysterious power of this composition comes from the certain worlds, certain rituals, which are basically lost now. They live in our fantasy world. They live maybe in certain descriptions of certain scientists, historians, but maybe even better and more comfortably, they are recreated. And they're destined to live, I believe, centuries through this power of this composition, Rite of Spring. It is easy for conductor and orchestra to very successfully go through it.
It's not the monumental challenge that I think it was originally thought to be.
I think most people would say fundamentally now it isn't a difficult piece to play as such, technically, but it is a difficult piece to play right.
just when you think you've played it a million times and you know where it is, something goes wrong on that last page, and once you get out, you cannot get back in again. It's very tricky.
And however well you think you know it, like all good pieces, it's slightly different in the hands of each conductor, in the acoustics of each hall, with the mood of each evening. It will change slightly, and you must never, ever, ever, especially in the later parts, dans sa car and so forth, however familiar you might be with changing time signatures and so forth, you're talking about the interaction of 100 musicians. Things happen, things shift. You do not leave the bridge, you do not go down below for a cup of cocoa halfway through that piece. You are very, very cautious.
I have to confess that I haven't done the Rite of Spring recently. I think it is a piece for younger people. I have done it quite often at the beginning of my life in music, but now I leave it to other people. Very strange. Well, I did it for the first time 50 years ago. For a young conductor, that was a challenge in my own country. But now every orchestra plays it inside out. They know it inside out. I mean, it is nearly not a challenge anymore. And it takes something away, because it is not such a challenge anymore. It takes away some of the danger of the piece.
Stravinsky had a thing about the Rite later in life. He tried to shake it off because he'd gone in different directions. He'd embraced atonalism. His ballet style later on was much more astringent, much sparer, much more economical, much lighter in many respects, and the music he wrote was more dissonant in many respects too. But I think he was glad in a way that this had had the impact. The l'enfant terrible that he had been, he was still viewed as that even in old age. And not all the interpreters retained their love for the music. Pierre Monteux later in life said he hated the piece. I can't believe it, to be honest, because on a good day he did such a wonderful job conducting it. But I don't think you can experience the Rite and not love it, not keep loving it. Early on with the Rite and other ballets, he hardly made a fortune, so what he did later in life, he made little tweaks to them and republished them with a new copyright date, which meant that, of course, he could earn more money out of them. That was the motive. If you actually listen to the various versions of the Rite, and I'm now not talking about the difference between what we hear now and what they heard in 1913, I'm talking about the minor differences between the various schools later on. They're not enormous, but they're there. But the main reason, I think, was, apart from one or two points of clarification, was to rake in the old dosh.